Okay, we've removed the masking fluid. Now all we have to do is to go in and soften some of these lines. And you can do that in several different ways. You can just paint right over them. Like this. And just to leave a little bit. So you soften it so it's not such a harsh line. Or you can actually go in and scrub it. You can take a little tiny scrubber brush, and this is just a Master's Touch. It's a very cheap brush. And if you just go in with water, you can just soften the edges. A lot of people don't like masking fluid because it is so harsh. You just have to know how to soften it. See, if you just soften those edges like this, keeping a kind of a damp brush, and looking for your highest highlights, where you really want the brightest highlights. You just don't want these harsh lines. See, you can just kind of gently scrub it back and see how soft that is. It's probably the best method for softening masking fluid. If you don't do this, it looks very artificial. And if it's still too bright, you can just go over it with a little more paint. But it does save you a tremendous amount of work. I'll clean up these edges too. I'll go back in here and do that in a minute. None of these are a bright white, so we really are just softening everything. And just with a little scrubby motion, you have to have a brush that's soft enough to not tear your paper, but strong enough to actually soften things. So this is the key to making masking fluid look blend in. You're just blending it in like that, finessing it. See, that already looks a lot better. Some of these are too harsh. We're just going to have to go back over. We will. Just maintaining a lighter form is what you're trying to do here. Some highlighted areas. I'm already liking that better. This is good down here. This edge we're probably going to go on and soften. I would actually scrub that out a little bit and take it over here so that that looks more realistic. Just be sure you don't have any abrupt stopping points like this. Masking fluid has a very hard edge. That's why you really have to work on keeping it soft. Okay. Much better. Much better. Just got to blend this into the actual leaf so it looks like it's a part of it. And you have to have a paper that can take scrubbing also. If your paper is cheap, you're not going to be able to do this. All right, I'm liking that. Okay. So I might, if I wanted to, go back in with a little bright green in some of these areas. Just so that it's not a pure white, but still a highlighted area. Softening, 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 softening. So that just the smallest amount of highlight is left, like that. And that looks good to me. And because I tend to overwork things, I would probably stop at this point. Bring that up into there. Just always thinking softer, softer. Bring some of this into there. A little bit. Making that contrast. Pushing this petal back here, because it is deep, like that. Bringing that out. And just softening that. Okay, and I'm going to stop because it's already getting overworked. So there you have it. That is our artichoke. All right, we've got our oil set up, ready to go. We have a panel that's been primed with oil and it's totally dry. We have our watercolor, we have our colors out, we have ultramarine blue. This is a color called carmine. That's our titanium white. This is lemon yellow, and this is new gamboge. So I've mixed up my violets. And when you're doing this, there's a process for finding color, the proper color when you're mixing. And it basically goes like this. You find the color family that you're looking for. You get the basic mix. Well, I'll show you here with this green. So if I know I'm going to make a green, first thing I have to do is I have to determine if I want a cool green or a warm green. And because I have earthy greens here, I'm using more of the gamboge to get an earthier green. And color mixing, especially with oils, is almost a process of just continuing to doing what you're doing until you get basically the color you want. Now that said, that was new gamboge. It's actually cadmium yellow. It's a warm yellow because we're going for earthy colors, and we know that if we want an earthier green, we need to use a warmer color. So we have a warm blue, which is the ultramarine, and we have a warm yellow. And so we basically just work it. It needs a lot more yellow. Because I'm going for a brighter green, I'm going to add some of the lemon yellow to that. Get that brighter green. That's much better. So there we have our nice mid-tone green. If we want to go lighter, we'll just pull a little bit out here and add a little more of the lemon yellow. So actually the lemon yellow worked better than the cadmium yellow. But if we want to tone it down, get it a little less vibrant, if we put a little bit of the cadmium yellow in there, it softens it and desaturates it a bit. So I like that. Then we've got our darker green up here. And this is how we mix color and water and oil. We just make what's called a color string, which is basically just our various colors in different values. So if I want to add white to it, I would bring some down here and make a whole separate little puddle of color. And now I get my highlights here, because of course in watercolor you can get your highlights by saving the whites, but in oil you have to add your whites. In watercolor we paint generally from light to dark, but in oil we paint from dark to light. So basically I'll take a photo of this palette because you can't see the palette very well here. But that's basically how I mix colors. So I have my violets, I have most of my greens, and anything else I need to add along the way, I'll just bring out. Okay, so we're ready to go. The next step will be to transfer our drawing, or to draw in the rough shape of the artichoke, which we'll do shortly.